Hi everyone, Michael from Bullion Now, bullionnow.com.au. So we're still at the Perth Mint and we're very lucky to get some time with one of the main designers or one of the designers of the Perth Mint team. So welcome and tell us who you are and how you fit in this big picture.
Hi Michael, how are you doing? My name's Lucas and I'm a coin designer here at the Perth Mint. Fit into a team of 6 designers here who are producing every coin that comes out of this place.
So what's your background? How did you get into coin design? What brought all this about?
Yeah, well, interestingly, my background comes, in fact, from fashion. I was in fashion design for a long time before this, which is obviously quite a different thing, but I had been doing a lot of work in metals through fashion, so belt buckles, cufflinks, jewellery, stuff like that. Developed a real interest in it, and I'd always, separate to that, just had a lifelong interest in coins and coin design. So when
Were
the
you a
opportunity
coin
came
collector?
up, I wasn't what you would call a huge collector, but
Yeah.
I had a small library of books on the subject. I liked the way that coin design worked. It was probably, maybe a little financially out of my grasp to get too heavily into the coin design collecting itself, but I'm really fascinated in how that process worked to, bring out these strong classical designs in such a small space.
Is that a classical pathway into coin design? Like are most coin designers fashion background in kind of that metal side?
Not at all. In fact, I wouldn't say there is a classical path into coin design because it's obviously, we've got 2 mints in this country. Add South Africa, I know there could well just be 3 in the whole Southern Hemisphere. So it's not the sort of thing that people are going to start a university course on learning. What the Mint looks for and very successfully has obtained is people who have got naturally very strong artistic skills. Some of the designers that I work with here just blow me away every day with how talented they are and an ability in whatever your background was. Some come from a more classical art background, some have come from advertising and graphic design backgrounds and stuff like that.
So it doesn't even have to be you've worked with 3-dimensional metal objects before.
No, because it's so hard to find people with that very niche skill that we're very fortunate that that will kind of allow us to train on the job, as it were. So really, I think what you're looking for in a good coin designer is someone who can take a theme and develop strong iconographic representations of that theme that will tell that story to whoever's looking at the coin using a strong visual language that's understandable immediately. If you can work with that, then I think you've got the good skills to become a coin designer. The technical aspects of how the metal works and relief and all that sort of stuff is something that you kind of learn on the job. I've been here 6 years now and I feel like every day I'm still learning something new. So.
So what is the process? So from start to finish, you've kind of hinted at it, but what is the process? So somebody comes to the Perth Mint and says, okay, I want a coin that's got, I don't know, make something, wattles on it, right? Yeah. I want a wattle coin.
So sometimes that is the case with we do have custom minting clients, and that is the case. Otherwise, the projects are all brainstormed and developed in-house. And so once those projects are decided on, be it a licensed product perhaps, or obviously recurring things like Anzac Day commemoratives.
Yep.
I think I remember seeing you guys looking at the 50th anniversary of the moon landing coin, things like that are obviously commemorative. So they'll just come to the studio, we'll have a brief meeting with the project manager who explains, this is what the theme is. So if let's use the 50th anniversary of the moon landing for an example, we'll go away, research it, read up on the subject, try to learn as much as you can about it. Find that the more you learn about a subject like that, the more ideas will pop out for ways you might be able to represent it, or interesting things you didn't know before. You think, I might put that into the story, that kind of thing. So we'll go away and do that and then come up with a whole bunch of concepts in whatever manner suits us. Some of us old-fashioned pencil and paper, Sometimes you might get out, I want to do this with some ink and brushes first to develop the idea, and then of course, digital drawing tablets. Once those designs and the concepts for them have gone through to the committee and the variation that they want is chosen, we'll refine that artwork. And when you start to refine the artwork, we will go and consult with the team in die polishing and the engravers who run this technology CNC down there in the factory, the boffins in the lab, I call it, and say, look, what I'm looking for here is I would like this part to have the high bit of the relief, and if we can push it back there, and if we've got it's a bullion coin with a frosted table, but I want some like min-max finish here with a bright on this part, we try to use those finishes to add to the artwork, add some depth, add some, I guess, colour, if you will. And once that's sort of sorted out, we'll produce production art, and the production art will have all that detail on that, saying where we want the map for the die polishing and all that kind of stuff. At which point it goes downstairs, and from the production art illustrations that we've produced of the coin design, they will then produce the dies, or hobs and the dies, using 3D technology in the CNC machines.
Yep.
They'll send us back a depth map of what the CNC machine is going to produce. We'll sign off on that. Yep, that looks good to us, or change this, or whatever. Yep. And then once it's gone there, and the guys in Dipole have done their incredibly intricate work, the first sample gets produced. Have a sample review once a week of the latest stuff. We look over them, either approve or not, depending. Send it back down, and then from that point, it's basically goes into production.
How long does that process take? I mean, it'd be different each coin, I know.
Yeah, how long is a piece of string?
Yeah.
But on the whole, we're generally trying to work it to about 8 months, maybe even a year in advance. For example, currently we've even got some 2024 stuff that we're in the middle of working on. But it'll usually be about 8 months to a year. Sometimes just the nature of the beast is that the project has to be turned around faster, whatever it takes situation. And sometimes things go into development for longer, and, they might even take a couple of years to come to fruition. But I'd say 8 months would be a good 8 months to a year is a ballpark. Yeah.
Good stuff. How many designs actually make it through?
Well, it depends on, again, it's how long is a piece of string. So if you have that bingo moment and you've nailed your design on the first go and that's the one, 100%. But then, of course, sometimes you will do 2 or 3. So I think you probably average it out maybe at 2 or 3 per design.
And what happens to the 2 or 3 that don't make it? Do they just get tossed, or do they get filed for we might come back to that?
Yeah, particularly if it's an ongoing series, we'll file it.
Say the Kookaburra.
Cookers, Kangas, stuff like that. We'll file those for future reference, Lunar series ones. And if it's a very specific one-off project or a custom minting project or whatever, maybe not. But we have everything archived if we ever need to go back and look for that kind of stuff. And there have been times when I have produced maybe 6 or 7 different ideas for a coin, just because the brain's going, it's hard to call a percentage, but I think that probably, a finalised piece would represent about 1/3 of the work, maybe.
So for something like the Lunar series, which is a 12-coin series spread over 12 years, have you already designed the later ones in the series, or it's a case of like this year's the Lunar Rabbit, so 12 months ago they came to you and said, hey, it's Lunar Rabbit next year, get on with the design?
Yeah, so the general process with the Lunars is that we don't design all 12 running forward. What we do is at the beginning of a new cycle, so that's 3 years ago now. In this case, for Lunar Series 3, the immensely talented Ying Zhong comes up with the elements that are going to remain consistent throughout. So there'll be a general
like the silver's
kind of establishment of that stuff, how that style will be, the fonts that are going to be used and where that goes, so that we can lock in what is essentially sort of a style guide. Same goes obviously for all the packaging and stuff. So in that case, she established packaging for all 12 designs, and
Yeah, that's
stick
fascinating.
to
that packaging that you've done for
you
join them all
great,
together
isn't it?
and
You put them all together and makes that picture.
That was
That's
brilliant.
she knocked it out of the park with that one. It's fantastic. So that will establish that throughout, and then we'll, as I said, probably be 1 or 2 years ahead of that. We're currently working on dragons, for example. And so it never ends, it keeps going. But yeah, we don't do all 12 in one bang.
Yeah, that's right. You
too,
can't show me
too
the
long a
big design,
process.
yeah.
Exactly. So that
Fascinating. Favourite design? Either your favourite design and then favourite design.
Favourite design. I think my favourite design of my own design is a 5-ounce silver antique coloured Anzac commemorative that featured the memorial stained glass windows from the War Memorial in Canberra, and I put them around like this so there's no top or bottom to the coin. Whichever way you look at it, it's always up the right way. And that one, I think it came out strikingly. It was a very popular coin, but also it meant a lot to me, that design. So that's definitely on my favourite list. Favourite of all time? That's a really tricky one. We produced some really good stuff here. Like,
it doesn't even have to be a Perth Mint coin.
I think my favourite coin of all time is probably the Mexican Libertad. I think that's
fair enough.
I think that's just
They nailed it, don't they?
yeah.
It's a great design.
It's just beautiful and classical. The original Liberty dollars as well. I can never pronounce it. Saint Jardin. I can never pronounce his name properly, but those are the kinds of things that I look at and just think, wow, like that is seriously classic coin design. And sometimes in this modern numismatic environment, I see things like people, it's so old fashioned, but.
I won't ask you which ones, but are there any where you go, what were they thinking?
Oh, of course. I mean, there are so many coins in the market these days that it would just be statistically impossible not to look at some things and go, all right.
Are there ones that you design, or that you see designed here even, that work, and I asked Neil this question, that work on a large picture scale, but when you bring it down and you see the coin itself, you go, that didn't kind of translate.
That absolutely happens, and we'll make sure to at least print on paper every design at the actual size. All our production art has the large design and then a recreation of it at the exact same size, so that you can have that chance, hopefully before it's too late, and go onto the actual presses and go, look, it's losing that, or this has just become a blob or whatever, But again, this is part of that whole learning process, because as you spend more time doing it, you get more and more an instinct for how that is going to work in front, and so you're almost sort of seeing it at that. And not only that, but the quality of the work, the technical expertise of the engineers and stuff downstairs, and the technology that we have these days to produce is just producing fine detail so incredibly well, and allows you to increase the amount of detail even in it. And it's got to do too with the finishes and the kind. So for example, you know in front that if you've got an antiqued coin, you can get a lot more detail into it, because that antiquing finish brings details out, as opposed to just say a standard proof coin or whatever. So you can go, with an antique coin I can really go for broke. And I remember some of the God series that we've put out, and a series of what do we call warfare ones that I worked on, Romans and Vikings. You could put the chainmail in and all kinds of little stuff, because the antiquing really pops that. So if you know what you're working with, you kind of get a sense of how much to push it or not. And that's one of the things that we really enjoy doing, is seeing how can we use the technology and how can we use the expertise that we've gotten this 120-year-old institution to push it that little bit further. Try to find some challenges that solid metal limits to an extent, obviously, what you can do. And working with a coloured coin, for example, that's a completely different process than a fully coloured painting. Or saying, how could I get that to actually look like smoke or something? Those kinds of challenges are like my favourite part of the job.
Yeah. going to come back to the coloured coins in a second. Like the high relief and the ones that you do that are concave. Does that allow you to bring? I often find that the detail on those is a lot better because you've got the concave of the coin and then the design actually pops out three-dimensionally. Does that give you more to play with? Is that more fun as a designer to play around with those?
To get those high relief or ultra high relief coins, much like the antiquing for that exact reason. It's like, oh, great, I can really get into the meat of it here and the detail. It takes a little more care to make sure that it's going to work in those right places. Different kinds of metal flow differently and stuff, so you've got to be aware of how much you can push that stuff. But those definitely are good. And the other thing as well, it's a fun challenge about that is if the design is going to be coming out just in high relief form or something, well, that's one thing over here. If the design is going to be coming out in standard relief or a CQ2 or something and in a high relief, then you've got to take a little more care to figure out, okay, what kind of idea is going to work in both?
Yeah.
Because some things just don't translate. And if you design for high relief or for antique or something, and then try to put that out in a standard 1 ounce silver proof or something, it may well fall apart on you. So that's something you've got to keep an eye on while you're actually working on it.
Do you change your designs depending on which metals you're using? So if you were using a platinum instead of a silver or a silver instead of a gold, do you change the design much?
To an extent, but not really. So many of the designs have to come out. Things like the cookers and kangas and koalas and stuff have to come out in all those metals. So you need to be conscious of that. And there are some differences. Gold's obviously a lot softer. Things like that the engineers in that might give you a heads up about. That's a whole other encyclopedic brain of knowledge that, it would take you a lifetime to get your head around what some of those guys know about metal. But for the most part, it's you have to be sure that it's going to work in pretty much any of those metals.
Yeah, okay. So the coloured coins, coloured printing has changed over the years. How is a coloured coin produced these days?
Okay, so nowadays it's a digital printing process. It used to be done pad printing style, like ceramic plates. If you've ever seen that on, how things are made or whatever. But now it's essentially sort of an enormous table-sized printer that has 6 arms that slide across like your standard inkjet printer does. But what they have on them is a tiny microscopic spray nozzle, essentially, that because of the relief on the coin, you need to be able to spray that ink down rather than print it like you would on paper, so that it can, I think it'll go up to 1 or 2 mil, like how much coverage with an accurate line that'll cover. And then it'll lay down a white base. You have this great to watch, a big tray of like coins all lined up like this. It's a very slow and specific process because you've got to have your alignments exactly right. If you have one of those coins ends up
crooked,
turned 1/10 of a millimeter that way, all the colours bang off, and back to the start again. And so that goes through on a big tray, which is cooled by a sort of pool of water it sits in, and it will lay a white base down first. Not every time. Sometimes we specifically design not to have. If you've seen some of the coloured antique dragons and stuff, the recent space coin Sean did, we don't put the white base down because you get that metal coming through. But if you want a solid, white, like good print, you put a white base down and then it will print the remaining colours over the top of each other, much like any other traditional printing process. And then it goes through a UV light that will bake that enamel pretty quickly, yeah.
Does that allow you, again, more artistic freedom when you can not only bring depth into it, but you can take colour into it as well?
Oh, definitely. I think in terms of, the reins are off. From the point of view of an artist, it comes back to just like if you're doing any kind of traditional painting or whatever, and you can really go for broke. And, for example, I'm just thinking of this year's, what is it, 2022? Yeah, this year's coloured kangas. I painted the sort of sunset effects. So the one side had this orange highlight down the other side. You can't do things like that, obviously, just in metal. Trying to come up with other solutions to keep it interesting like that. But yeah, of course, you just got the let your imagination run wild once you get colour put into it.
How much I don't even know how to ask this question really. How much of the design has technology changed in that, is it all digital now, or are you still free to go? And you kind of hinted at this before, but you get your piece of paper and you just physically draw it out and then say, this is what I want.
Yeah. The how much of it is up to the point of production art, up to us. So if we want to work in traditional media and stuff like that, that's entirely our call as
So
what we think will work as best. It will eventually have to end up in the computer. So that might be a finished piece of art and it gets scanned, and then that, because to create the production art, and it needs to be sent in a digital form to the engraving department to work with. With regards to engraving, there are still times, particularly with animal coins and more natural themes, that we actually go old-fashioned and create plaster sculpts like they used to do. We still do that.
Still do that?
Probably, I don't know, maybe one a month. Almost.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That incredible sculptor called Jovan comes in, talks to some producers those for us. When we do the old-fashioned plaster sculpts, those then go into a laser scanning machine that scans every bump and ripple through the whole thing and creates a 3D map for the CNC machines and that. So everything ends up digital at some point. But when it's created, it's kind of a case-by-case basis.
You can still use pretty much any medium you want.
Yeah. I love the flexibility that drawing digitally gives you, because our drawing tablets essentially just are a pen and a piece of paper in digital form, but of course you have undo buttons. Yeah, you don't end up tearing the paper to shreds, rubbing things out and stuff. You can move them and resize them a little bit if you think you need it. That flexibility for me is fantastic. Of course, there are just some things that you can't fake, and you want to get out the ink and pens or the paints or something to do. I have been enjoying recently using large prints of the coins to paint coloured versions of the coins and then scan those. Just kind of get what effect do I want from this, and how do I think I'll get it the best.
Fantastic. It's been fascinating.
Great.
Thank you very much for your time. It's appreciated. I know you guys are definitely busy. I know when I put in the request, talking to Amy, she was saying, "Oh, this one's there, and this one's here, and this one's doing that," and that one's I don't know.
Going on. We have a once a week catch up meeting to get with each other and find out what we're all up to, and every time it's mind blowing. Like, wow, you do like doing all that? Well, yeah, there's a lot going on, right? It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be in coins, I tell you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate it.
That's it.